again, everybody. This is Arthur here with another dose of the New World Report. I was thinking about going back into Syria a little bit, and I said I was going to do a little bit of a technical analysis, or not technical analysis. Sorry, I'm mistaking this for the Bitcoin and altcoin videos, but I'm going to do some strategic analysis where I'm going to go into a little bit of what is actually going on in regards to the U.S. Israel's recent actions and what they mean versus Iran. So where is this thing I wanted? I'm going to pull this up again. All right. So as we went over again, this is how we're going to define the different sides. We're going to do the resistance alliance, where, as they call themselves, the resistance, with Russia added on politically supporting and with bombs from the air, the Air Force, because none of these have an actual sophisticated Air Force except Russia. We have Iran. We have Iran here with their Shia militias, Hezbollah. And then we have the international coalition here with Saudi Arabia, the U.S., and Israel. Even though it's not connected, I'm gonna put that in there. I'll explain why later. This whole thing started in a way. The reason U.S. got in earlier was because of their bigger geopolitical goals, which had a lot to do with Israel. I'll get into a little bit later in this video. Then we have the Kurds, which are completely their own important actor now in the Syrian geopolitical chessboard. And we have the rebels, which have turned less and less important and are being seen for more of a pawn or a piece played by the different sides. And then we have Turkey and Qatar here, which have been moved into this situation, as I said in a previous video, at Qatar because of the recent spat with Saudi Arabia, and Turkey because of the U.S. And Israel, the international coalition side support of the Kurds, which for Turkey has always been a red line. Let's see. So we're going to start with, let's get into all the different people and what they really care about. Like if you look into here, into this graph, this is, I pulled this up the other day. This is from The Economist. It's a pretty good graph. Or not graph, but infograph, where it shows all the relationships here and throughout. And I'm gonna go through all the different players and what they really want in this scenario, and then it'll start making sense to you why everybody's doing what they're doing. So, some people say it was pipes. I'm not gonna. If you want, I can pull it up. The pipe plan. This is the pipes that were supposedly going to go through Syria, through Iran, now Turkey, and these countries, which are basically Saudi Arabia, these Gulf states around the Persian Gulf, these Arab states around the Gulf, and Jordan. It would go through them and it would benefit them. And that's part of why I always say that, there's always different aspects to why something happens and different factors that play in. And that's one of the factors. Now, another factor that is important to consider from the beginning was Saudi's role. The reason Saudi and Israel are so close in their relations all of a sudden is because they have very close interests in what is going on in Syria right now. So for Saudis, a huge, probably the most important aspect of this whole support for the rebels against Bashar was Iran trying to stop this so-called Shia axis or Shia Crescent that would run through this whole region, or it would be kind of like, connecting Iran through Iraq, through Syria. This Shiite Crescent was a threat to the Sunni leader, quote unquote, or what they wanted to be the Sunni leaders of at least the Arabs, Saudi Arabia. That's why the Israeli and Saudi interests are so close in this situation, because they both want to fight against Iran and Iran's growing influence in the region. Now, the U.S. came in to help these allies, especially Israel, because, in my opinion, pretty much everybody would agree that the U.S. supports Israel more than they support Saudi Arabia in this region. So the U.S. came in to help them, but what was happening is that the Iranians had a connection to Lebanon. Iran, which would be on this side of the. If this was the map, it would be further to the east. Would come in through Baghdad, because now the Americans toppled Saddam, and now Iran works with the Shiite government in Iraq, and they would transport weapons through different ways. Now they could have done it through land, which would have made a decent land route through these different countries. And so, in order to stop Iran's funding of Hezbollah, because you got to realize Israel right now has been able to stop every other Arab army, so to speak, except Hezbollah when they attacked Lebanon, were in a way forced to retreat. So, weakening Iran through destroying Syria or any ally of Iran in Syria was very beneficial to Israel and Saudi Arabia. They both would get what they wanted in this. Now, what is Russia's intentions? Russia in here, they want to fill in the emptying role of the U.S., right? So the U.S. has been emptying. The U.S. has bases all around. I said one of the reasons that in a previous video, I said one of the reasons that the U.S. is so interested in this region, it's not so much about the oil anymore, because the U.S. can make its own, it can dig up its own oil. There's a lot of oil in North America, and they don't need so much the oil as much as they need the influence and the bases. If anything, in a video that we can talk about later, the U.S. probably, or maybe wouldn't mind the region kind of destabilizing even more, because who would then benefit the least out of this would be China, because they really do depend on Middle Eastern oil, and the big giant Chinese machine is going ahead, but without the oil from the Middle East, it would have big problems. In a way, it's the Achilles heel of this big Chinese dragon / machine. And so, maybe the U.S. is really thinking ahead, and that's why it hasn't really stopped war in the region. Now, Russia wants to come in because, they want to feel more important, as they had after the Soviet Union fell. Russia had a down leveling of their self-conscience, you could say. I'm sorry, self-confidence. I can't talk right now. And they wanted to gain influence throughout there. They wanted to be seen as the big guy. And also they wanted to keep their base in Syria. Iraq joined here, going to Iraq now. Iraq joined because, Mosul fell. They realized they were going to be at the end of this shit stick, pardon my French, that was gonna, be dealt to them after a Islamic principality, as the I think it was the State Department or some kind of report put it, a Salafist principality would be very bad for them, and so that's what ISIS was, and so they realized that joining the resistance, not to mention Iran was the first country that came to their help when Mosul fell. So that's why they joined. And so, and also the Kurds. Now the Kurds, they didn't really know what to do when this began. The yellow is the Kurds up here. The Kurds didn't really know what to do when this began. But as the battle progressed, they started gaining support from the West. And they started getting more support from Israel and more support from the West. And now we can see public support from Saudi Arabia as well these days. and they're to a point where they're now straight fighting for independence. They have expanded to a lot of area which is not all Kurdish, but it's not that, a lot of Arab villages are happy to be a part of this, Rojava or northern or West Kurdistan uh, region. So that's where the Kurds are. That's where Turkey stands too, is because now that the Kurds are winning, so to speak, what they need to do, they're getting their goals, they're reaching their goals. That's very, very bad for Turkey. So as Turkey started off calling for Assad's demise, Turkey was one of the first ones and one of the biggest supporters. Erdogan really backstabbed Assad. 1 month before that whole uprising, they were eating dinner together a year before that, and then Turkey's calling for the removal of Assad, or they were at that point letting ISIS in, and any kind of rebels they could let in. But now you don't see them calling for this anymore, because right now all they care about is Kurds, 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 which they should have really foretold. It's kind of a mistake on their part, which they couldn't realize that this was just going to happen if they fund Islamist militias in Syria, or support them. And then we got Hezbollah and the rebels. The rebels trying to get in power, but at this point they are being used as pawns. Now I can get the rebels later, but I won't right now because I'm trying to talk about the bigger picture. Hezbollah here is trying to keep alive. They realize that without Iran support, somehow getting into their supplying them, they're not going to be able to keep up to fighting as they want to do, fight Israel or resist against the Zionists, or however they would put it. Now this is where the Israel and the US started. They wanted to stop this quote unquote Shia Crescent that was going from Iran all the way into Lebanon right here. And so they didn't mind so much when all this was going on. When ISIS came and these rebels came, Israel wasn't really Israel has openly shot down Syrian aircrafts, and this is a war going on, and they claim that there is bullets being fired, but this is a war going on. Stray bullets fall, stray armaments get into bordering areas all the time. But every time this has happened, Israel has came in and struck tactical targets from the Syrian side, or Syrian government side, and they have openly gave medical aid, and now it is coming out military aid, in a way, intelligence aid to rebels close to this area right here. Why? All in order to stop the influence from Syria, or from Iran, into Hezbollah. They don't like Hezbollah. They rather deal with the rebels, which they see as a weaker entity, less unified, than to deal with Hezbollah. Now, let me get into this thing right here. Now, this is a great article from this lady called Sharmeen Narwani. This is just a recent article, and it's talking about how it's called Dispatch from the Middle East, U.S. Buildup All About Iran, from the American Conservative. Now, this is a great analysis, but what I wanted to focus on was this map right here. Now, as you can see, let me try to zoom in here a little bit. All right, now, you see these highways? These are the main highways that go into Iraq from Syria, or from Iraq into Syria, depending on which way you're coming. And these are the ways that Iran used to connect. Now you see these roads would come in right through here. There's different ways, and I'm not going to go into this article very deeply right now, but it talks about how Iran's favorite route into Lebanon is through here, where in Iraq it's mostly grain around here. They use this road. They rather not go through the Kurds, because the Kurds are very under the influence of, you could say, Israel. You know, there's a lot of intelligence sharing, so they don't want to go through there because, you know, that's how their convoys get shot from the air, you know, airstrikes. And then they don't want to go through down here because there's a lot of desert around here. And this desert through Anbar province of Iraq has a lot of Sunnis who don't support such things, you know, don't support Iran and Hezbollah. So they don't rather not go through here. But they would rather go through here, which has been blocked off by the ISIS, which is the black. Now, or the IS, Islamic State. So this is the current map of the situation right now in Iraq. As you can see, it's very similar to the one I got here, which is from the 27th. This was written on the 28th. You see how the red is connected here. They had the red is the Syrian government, the green is the allies, the yellow is the Kurds once again, and the black is the IS, Islamic State. The red is also the government of Iraq on this side. So the red is basically the government, and they're the friends of the Iranians here trying to help. So as you can see, the U.S. had stopped this. Now, this red part wasn't a part of the government hadn't taken this red part earlier. The black had completely taken this from before, and they were coming in. The Syrians with Iranian-backed militias were trying to come in and connect this road to this road so they could support Lebanon through this right here, because, you know, this was closed and they didn't want to go through Kurdistan. You know, and the government did control this Anbar province, though it was desert and maybe more dangerous. So as they were coming, this is from last week or 2 weeks ago, the U.S. started bombing the Syrian army. Now this was legitimated, or the reasoning for this that they had was because that the Syrians were moving too close to the Syrian rebels for comfort, you know, but it's pretty obvious that they didn't want this road to fall in the hands of the red guys, or as I would say, or the Syrian government. So right after this, the Syrian government did a blitzkrieg, and they took this, and so they did connect the two sides. Now, it's not through, you know, the highway, but there are roads going through here, and I'm sure they could make roads. So they did end up isolating the green guys, so they couldn't completely connect to the black or to the ISIS guys. As you can see, they were able to connect here, right here through this border, and they're trying to grow towards this, because like I said, this is the main road that they rather have. This is Palmyra, this is Deir Zor, and they would rather take this. And so as you can see, they're trying to do a blitzkrieg towards this. This is very important routing. Why again? Because this is really how it started, is because Iran's connection to Hezbollah. You know, this area is the Shiite Crescent, you know, or as we would say it, this area on this map. And they're trying to, you know, prevent this crescent from being there. And, no, this is where we're at. This is very interesting, you know. So hopefully this has helped some of you guys understand this issue a little bit better. Here at this channel, I like to inform a little bit about geopolitics. I love history, I love geopolitics, I love cryptocurrency. You know, we'll get into some of those videos as well. You know, follow me if you like these kinds of videos. Give me a text, send me a message, you know, send a comment, see if you like to see different things, or maybe you have a question. I would love to get back to you guys. Thanks again.